Hello, it's me, Clayton. I just finished watching 3,000 Years of Longing, directed by George Miller and starring Tilda Swinton and Idris Elba. Now, George Miller's previous work certainly happens to show that he's a very artistic director, as well as one who's willing to take on a variety of genres. From Big Pig in the City to Happy Feet to, of course, the Mad Max franchise, which I recognize most from him. And this is certainly a lot different than anything he's worked on previously. 3,000 Years of Longing is a fantasy romance film that tells the story of a scholar and a djinn. Let's get to the story, shall we? The scholar in this case is Alethea, played by Tilda Swinton, who happens to know a lot of narratives throughout her studies of the storytelling genres. And when she encounters a djinn while she's in Istanbul, she happens to know the consequences of going for all three wishes, because she's apparently read Aladdin and most stories that revolve around wishing, and she knows the consequences of those who happen to give in to their heart's desires. So she happens to hear various stories from the jinn, played by Idris Elba, as she finds herself not only growing closer to the jinn, but also understanding the various ways in which why we tell ourselves stories, and she happens to find out the various aspects of the jinn when it comes to how he can be explained scientifically. So yeah, this story definitely happens to touch upon a lot of aspects that I didn't expect George Miller to touch upon. From various stages of love to the various aspects of storytelling and why they are integrated into certain things. The concept of having several short stories thrown into one romance film with several casts that have no connection to Alethea, but every single connection possible to the jinn. It's definitely a film that oozes its very own style, and it's unlike any other romance that I've ever seen. But that doesn't mean it doesn't have some major flaws. The various shorts make the film feel like its pacing is all over the place. Sometimes it goes really slow, sometimes it goes a little too fast. It doesn't really find its groove that really happens to feel like it feels natural. On top of that, both the jinn and Alethea are just very odd characters. They really feel like their writing is either too wordy or too baked in metaphor, but at the same time, it does at least create a style that happens to make it feel like it's its own thing. But on top of that, I really do appreciate the fact that the film allows you to write your own conclusions when it comes to a lot of the actions its characters take near the end of the story. Especially when it comes to the fact that both Idris Elba and Tilda Swinton are clearly going through their roles with the exact amount of gravitas that such roles demand. On top of that, the visuals of the film are every bit as wacky as you'd expect from George Miller, and they happen to really fill the film with the fantasy vibes that you'd expect from this kind of scenario. Everything from the jinn's transformations to the various creatures that we discover throughout the film. Every short happens to have its own unique thing that happens in it that keeps me interested, even when the film's story does get kind of convoluted. So this is a tough sell for me, because on one hand, it certainly takes a lot of risks, and it certainly happens to do its own thing, that it's in a way that makes it very adventurous, but at the same time, there's a lot of flaws with pacing and writing that I don't really understand. So it's kind of a mixed bag for me. That's why I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. See you next time.